North Korea launched a sixth nuclear test on Sunday of a hydrogen bomb. The test was the most powerful ever by the communist nation. It created the effect of a 6.3 magnitude earthquake. Before the test, North Korea released pictures of the country's leader, Kim Jong-un, with the country's military leaders inspecting a nuclear warhead. In response to that test, Defense Secretary James Mattis issued this warning.
Any threat to the United States or its territories, including Guam, or our allies, will be met with a massive military response, a response both effective and overwhelming.
But the Commander-in-Chief, Donald Trump, was much more muted when asked about the U.S. response to North Korea.
Mr. President, will you attack North Korea?
So the question is, what can the U.S. do? What should they do? Joining us right now is U.S. Army retired three-star General John Morgan III. He is the former commanding general of the 2nd Infantry Division in Korea Peninsula. General, so we've been dealing with North Korea for a long time now. President Obama had to deal with this, call them our greatest threat. So here's the fundamental issue. What are our options? Because we've tried diplomacy, tried sanctions. Is a military option the only thing left?
No. I think it's important that the United States government keeps all elements of its national power on the table. The military option is certainly one of them that Secretary Mattis talked about in his interview the other day. But clearly, the diplomatic options, economic sanctions, all of those things continue to be a comprehensive approach to dealing with the North Korean problem.
And so you have someone described as very unstable. Well, let's just be perfectly honest. If North Korea is able to get a nuclear weapon, then he moves in the same space as Pakistan, other countries, knowing full well that is a deterrent from the U.S. or anybody else coming after them, because some say that he's more vulnerable not having a nuclear weapon.
Well, I mean, the North Korean regime, if you look at it from their perspective, I mean, he's always felt as though he is vulnerable on the Korean Peninsula. And I don't think that the idea that, I mean, he's been moving for many years towards building a nuclear capability. They've obviously advanced that rapidly, and probably more so than what we thought through the U.S. intelligence community. But the reality is, whether he's using conventional capability or a nuclear capability, vulnerability is still about the same.
And why is this so significant? And we're talking about, I mean, should this really be China's problem? Why is it our problem?
Well, the reality is the fact that this should be an international problem. The idea that the United States is in the middle of it certainly is, we are allies in a bilateral partnership and relationship with the Republic of Korea, and we have been since the end, or should I say the armistice was signed in 1953. But as the Kim regime has now moved to more nuclear capable systems and weapons, this becomes an international problem. We, as the United States government, should continue to make it as an international problem, continue to work very, very closely with our partners in the region and our bilateral partner in the Republic of Korea.
You know, General, everything I've read says that this issue is about containment and deterrent, that North Korea, for all practical purposes, has nuclear capabilities now. And so that's really not the debate. If that's the case, then what does America's policy towards them change? And if it does, then what role does China play in that change of approach if we're talking about containment and deterrent?
Well, certainly the role of the Chinese, I mean, we're in the Asian region of the world. China is a major player, obviously a global player, and they should be part of any diplomatic or other solutions that go forward as we deal with the
But aren't they conflicted, if you will? I mean, if we have a major war against North Korea, then if North Korea and South Korea come together, that's a problem for China. But China certainly wants to keep them separated because they're their biggest trade partner.
Well, they are, in fact, a trade partner. But as we talk about this from, you know, a problem on the peninsula with weapons and bellicose statements and remarks, it's important to make sure that we continue to work with all our partners in the region, and then certainly the Chinese government, to make sure that this is a comprehensive, holistic approach to dealing with something that, if it goes military, is not good for anyone.
You know, it seems like this administration has really been ratcheting up the talk around this issue to what I would consider a very dangerous degree, particularly if we all acknowledge the fact that we are dealing with someone who appears to be unstable, who definitely has potentially nuclear capabilities, it seems. Do you believe that this White House at this point is doing more harm than good as it relates to this issue?
Well, certainly the remarks and the bellicose statements, we should tone down the rhetoric. When you are a global superpower, I'm of the firm opinion that you don't necessarily need to always walk around and beat your chest. The United States has tremendous capabilities across all elements of its national power, and I don't think that the rhetoric is helpful in this particular case, and it only causes escalatory instances on the Korean Peninsula back and forth between the Kim regime and the United States government.
Now, in general, you say we should have an international group. Should it be led by Japan? Should it be led by India? Is it not just China? Is it everyone in that region that should be stepping forward, especially Japan, which is one of the most developed nations?
Well, certainly all of those nations that you mentioned have a significant role in the region. The United States, as a world leader, should take on a lead role. But it should be worked in concert with all of those nations that you mentioned. And really, when we're talking about nuclear capability, the entire world needs to be involved with this. It needs to be an international problem, and it needs to be an international solution.
Last question for you. If you are sitting across from President Trump and congressional leaders as someone who commanded troops on the Korean Peninsula, what do you tell them they should be doing right now?
I think we should, again, be considering all possible options. Certainly the military is doing all of its preparations, preparing defensively. As a former commander in the U.S. 2nd Infantry Division, we would continue our preparations in the event that hostilities were to break out. But if I were giving advice, it would be one along the lines of, let's continue to exercise a full element of our national power, diplomatic, economic, use of sanctions, and certainly the preparation of the military in the event that it had to go to that stage.
Retired 3-star General John Morgan III, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Weekdays on TV One.
I will never lie to you.
Oh my God.
Roland Martin.
He doesn't want to talk to us. He wants to ignore us.
Uncensored.
Hell no.
That ain't gonna cut it, boo.
Unapologetic.
No, that is fundamentally false. You are wrong.
Unfiltered.
He wants an America where we all look alike. He ain't talking about black people.
Unrelenting.
You better go work out, because you got a fight on your hands.
NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Weekdays at 7 a.m. on TV One.